You pull into your driveway after like a really long day. You turn off the car and you look at your house.
Mm-hmm.
You see this physical structure, right? Wood framing, brick, the drywall, the roof over your head.
Mm-hmm.
It feels uh it feels solid, permanent,
Yeah.
and most importantly, it feels like it belongs to you.
Yeah, absolutely. We tend to focus entirely on that physical property. I mean, we look at the square footage, the neighborhood, the school district.
Right.
But sitting right underneath that physical structure is this like invisible, highly complex web of legal agreements. The legal reality of how you pay for that property is actually what determines your security in it.
Exactly. And I know reading up on real estate financing might sound like, I don't know, a cure for insomnia at first glance.
Oh, for sure.
But I want to validate your curiosity right out of the gate here, because that invisible web dictates who holds the ultimate power over that roof.
Mm.
And depending on where you live, that power dynamic might look vastly different than you think.
It really does. The financial structure isn't just, paperwork. You sign in a blur at the closing table and then just forget in a filing cabinet somewhere.
Yeah, your hand is cramping from signing 50 times.
Right. But it is the literal rule book for worst case scenarios.
Welcome to today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We are looking at a really illuminating set of sources today, specifically a text called Mortgage Structures and Deed of Trust Dynamics.
It's a great read. Dense, but great.
Very dense. Which is why our mission today is to demystify this incredibly complex web of real estate financing. We are going to figure out what those confusing legal terms actually mean, examine the hidden mechanisms of borrowing, and uncover some structural differences in how property loans are handled, depending entirely on where you happen to live.
Yeah, geography plays a huge role here.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even begin to understand the complex legal loopholes of homeownership, we first have to master the foundational vocabulary of borrowing. And it is honestly surprisingly counterintuitive.
It really is. A lot of people feel a bit of whiplash when they sit down to sign those closing documents. You think you know what a mortgage is, right?
Right, everybody uses that word.
Exactly. But the legal terminology completely flips our casual, everyday language right on its head. To get grounded, let's look at how the source text clarifies this. It states very plainly, quote, in a mortgage transaction, the lender is known as the mortgagee and the borrower is known as the mortgager.
Let's just pause there for a second, because I know the first time I read that, my brain completely rejected it.
Oh, you're not alone.
In everyday conversation, you say, I am going to the bank to get a mortgage. It feels like the bank is handing a mortgage over to you.
Yeah, like it's a product they sell you.
Right. But legally, the flow of the transaction is moving in the exact opposite direction.
Precisely. A mortgage is not the loan. The loan is the money.
Yeah.
You sign a promissory note, which is essentially, your literal IOU to the bank.
It's your personal promise to repay the debt.
Exactly. The mortgage, however, is the pledge. It's the lien-in. And a lien is simply a legal right given to a creditor to keep possession of a property or, force the sale of it until a debt is discharged.
Okay, so wait. I, as the borrower, am creating that mortgage.
Yes. You create that pledge of collateral, and you give it to the lender to secure the loan. You owe the money, you pledge the collateral, and you are responsible for maintaining the property.
So that makes me the mortgager.
That makes you the mortgager.
Wow. Okay, and the bank is the mortgagee.
Correct. They are on the receiving end of your pledge. They provide the funds, they hold the legal interest that lien in the property until the loan is repaid, and, well, they are the ones who are owed the money.
So if the mortgager, me, defaults by stopping those monthly payments, the mortgagee, the bank, has the right to exercise foreclosure to recover the balance of the loan.
You've got it. It is a strictly two-party system, borrower and lender, mortgager and mortgagee.
Okay, if you ever find yourself staring at a real estate document and your eyes start to just like glaze over with all the E's and O's, because mine definitely do, here is a conceptual trick to keep it straight.
Oh, I like these. What do you have?
Think of the or in mortgager as the person who organizes the loan and assumes the risk.
Organizes the risk. Okay.
Right, because you are the one organizing the paperwork, signing your life away, and taking on the risk of losing your house. Mortgager. Risk.
That's a great way to look at it.
And on the flip side, the E in mortgagee is the entity, usually, a big bank, that is expecting to extract their payments every single month. Mortgagee. Extract.
Organizes the risk, expects to extract. I love that. It perfectly captures the power dynamic at play here. You aren't just taking money. You are actively handing over a lever of power to the lender.
A huge lever of power.
Huge. You are handing them the right to take your house if the terms of that promissory note are broken.
But in a traditional two-party mortgage, that lever of power is pretty heavily regulated by the courts.
Yes, very heavily. There is a specific, well-defined legal mechanism in place to handle what happens if the mortgagor stops paying the mortgagee. It's a system built entirely on judicial oversight.
Right, but relying on the courts can be incredibly slow.
Glacially slow, sometimes.
So if relying on the courts is too slow for lenders, they had to invent a workaround. They basically had to invent a middleman.
They did.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because in many places, you aren't actually signing a traditional mortgage at all when you buy a house. You're signing something called a deed of trust.
Right, also known as a trust deed. And structurally, this completely shifts the landscape of the transaction away from that traditional two-party dynamic we just talked about, and it introduces a three-party system.
Okay, so let's look at this new arrangement. Who is sitting at the table now?
Well, first, you have the borrower. But in a deed of trust, the borrower is called the trustor.
The trustor, got it.
Second, you have the lender, who is now referred to as the beneficiary.
Okay, borrower is trustor, lender is beneficiary.
Exactly. And finally, you have the new arrival, the trustee. This is a neutral third party. Frequently, it's an escrow company, a title company, or sometimes like a specialized trust company.
So we have the trustor borrowing the money, the beneficiary lending the money, and this new trustee just kind of standing in the middle.
Standing right in the middle.
What is the trustee actually doing, though? Like, what is their function in all this?
What's fascinating here is how the deed of trust splits the very concept of ownership completely in half.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. When you buy a house with the deed of trust, the document actually transfers the legal title of the property to that impartial third-party trustee.
Wait, really? The legal title?
Yes. The trustee holds the legal title as collateral for the promissory note you signed with the lender.
But wait, why would I ever agree to that? If I'm the buyer, handing my legal title to some third party so the bank has an easier time dealing with me sounds like a terrible deal. Do I get, like, a radically lower interest rate for giving up my legal title?
You don't get a discount, no. But in the states that use this system, you generally don't have a choice.
Wow.
It's simply how real estate financing is structured in that specific jurisdiction. And while it sounds really alarming to lose your legal title, the system does compensate by giving the borrower, the trustor, what is called equitable title.
Okay, let's make sure we clearly define the difference between legal title and equitable title for the listener, because that seems like a really crucial distinction to make.
It is. Equitable title means you have the right to obtain full legal ownership eventually, once the debt is paid off. But more importantly, for your day-to-day life, it means you have the full use of and responsibility for the property.
Okay, so I still get the keys.
You get the keys, you live there, you paint the walls, you mow the lawn, you pay the property taxes. From a practical, everyday standpoint, it is absolutely your house.
Right.
But on paper, legally, the legal title is separated from that physical use.
It's just so counterintuitive. You think you own your house completely the day you move in, but under a deed of trust, you just own the use of it and the, I guess, promise of future ownership.
Exactly.
And the legal title is just sitting somewhere else entirely. So is this trustee basically just a highly paid, neutral babysitter for a piece of paper, holding on to the title until the loan is fully satisfied?
That is actually a pretty accurate way to describe it. This state of affairs continues for the entire lifespan of the repayment period. Every single month, you make your payment to the lender, the beneficiary, and the trustee. They do absolutely nothing during this time.
They just sit there with the paper.
Just babysitting the paper. Now, if you make every payment for 30 years and you fully satisfy the debt, the trustee finally executes a document called a deed of reconveyance.
A deed of reconveyance.
Right. That document releases the legal title and transfers it back to you, permanently uniting the legal and equitable titles at last.
Okay, so think of the trustee like an automated escrow vault. The deed is locked inside. If you make your final payment, the vault opens up and hands the deed back to you.
Perfectly said. It operates on pure contractual logic.
But, I mean, an automated vault isn't just there to hand things back when times are good. The vault only truly springs into action when things go wrong, right?
And that is the absolute crux of the three-party system. To understand why lenders developed and actually prefer this arrangement, we have to look really closely at what happens when a borrower defaults. We have to look at the differences in the foreclosure process.
Okay, let's examine the foreclosure showdown, because this is where the theoretical legal jargon we've been talking about turns into a very harsh reality. Let's start with the traditional two-party mortgage.
Okay.
Imagine you lose your job, you drain your savings, and you simply cannot pay the bank, the mortgagee, anymore. What is the mechanism for the bank to get the house back in that system?
Well, in a traditional mortgage, the foreclosure process is what's known as a judicial foreclosure.
Meaning it requires the justice system.
Exactly. The lender cannot just come and take the house. They actually have to file a formal lawsuit against the borrower for default.
Wait, so they have to actually sue you?
They do. They have to serve you with papers. They go through a whole discovery process. They have to get on a court docket, prove to a judge that you actually owe the money and haven't paid, and then the judge has to issue a decree allowing the lender to foreclose and sell the property at a sheriff's sale.
That sounds exhausting. And I know the court system is not exactly built for speed. It's built for due process.
Right, which means a borrower could contest the foreclosure, they could raise defenses, or demand the lender prove they even own the original note.
That must take forever.
Judicial foreclosures can take an incredibly long time. Depending on the backlog of the local courts and the legal strategies employed by the borrower, it can take months or, in some jurisdictions, multiple years to finalize a single foreclosure.
Multiple years. Oh, wow. That perfectly explains the bottleneck. If you are a bank, navigating the entire judicial system just to recover your collateral is a massive liability.
Huge liability.
Now let's look at the three-party deed of trust. You stop paying the beneficiary. The trustee is still holding the legal title in that automated escrow vault. What is the exact mechanism that happens next?
Well, a deed of trust allows for what is called a non-judicial foreclosure.
Non-judicial.
Oh.
So bypassing the court system entirely.
Entirely. And this is possible because of a very specific provision baked into the deed of trust called a power of sale clause.
The power of sale clause. That sounds like the absolute key to this whole dynamic. How does that clause work?
Basically, by signing a deed of trust with a power of sale clause on day one, the borrower is pre-authorizing the sale of the property in the event of a default.
Pre-authorizing it. So you're waiving your rights up front.
You are essentially waiving your right to a day in court before the property is sold. Because the trustee already holds the legal title, the lender doesn't have to sue you to get it.
Oh, wow.
The lender simply notifies the trustee that the borrower has defaulted.
So the vault receives the signal that the contract has been broken.
Yep. The trustee then steps in, adheres strictly to the procedures outlined in the original trust deed and whatever state law applies, and initiates the foreclosure themselves.
No judge needed.
No judge at all. There is usually a mandated notice of default, a waiting period, say maybe 90 to 120 days, and then a notice of sale. And if the borrower cannot quickly bring the loan current, the trustee has the legal authority to put the property up for auction at a trustee's sale, often literally right on the courthouse steps.
Without a judge ever looking at a single piece of paper.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? The aha moment here isn't just that the trustee can sell your house. It's a realization that you gave them the permission to do it the very day you bought the house.
When you signed it.
You signed a contract containing that power of sale clause. This is a massive structural advantage for the lender. It completely removes the biggest hurdles to recovering their money: the unpredictable timeline and the expense of the court system.
It is a profound advantage. And the source text explicitly highlights this, noting that from the lender's point of view, the power of the trustee to foreclose on behalf of the beneficiary is the primary benefit of the entire system.
I mean, I can see why.
It replaces a multi-year judicial battle with a streamlined, predictable process that can be totally completed in a matter of months.
Which perfectly explains why lenders would prefer it. But earlier we established that this isn't just like an option a bank can pick from a menu. This structure is mandated by law in certain parts of the country, while other parts rely entirely on the traditional judicial mortgage.
Right. The geographical split is quite striking. The text notes that while deeds of trust might be less common overall than they used to be historically, they are still actively mandated or are the primary instrument in approximately 20 U.S. states.
20 states?
Yeah. The sources specifically cite California, Texas, and Virginia as prime examples where trust deeds completely dominate real estate financing.
Think about the underlying reasons for that geography, too.
Yeah.
Why California? Why Texas?
Boom states.
Exactly. If you look at the history of those states, they experienced rapid, massive real estate booms. They had expanding populations and, expanding frontiers. To build housing that fast, you need a highly liquid, fast-moving lending environment.
Capital flows to where risk is manageable. If a bank back east is going to lend money to someone buying property in a rapidly expanding western state, they need to know they can recover their collateral quickly if the venture fails.
They couldn't afford to navigate frontier courts for 3 years to get a property back.
Exactly. The deed of trust and the non-judicial foreclosure it enables was basically the legal technology that solved that problem. It attracted capital by drastically lowering the lender's risk profile.
That fundamentally shifts the balance of power depending entirely on where you draw the state lines. I mean, you could have two people with the exact same credit score buying the exact same style of house for the exact same price. But because one lives in a state that uses traditional mortgages, say New York or Florida, and the other lives in Texas or California, their risk profile is completely different.
Totally different.
The person in the mortgage state has the buffer of the court system. The person in the deed of trust state faces a much steeper, much faster cliff if things go wrong.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it underscores a very specific warning found in the source material. The text asks a direct question. Are trust deeds a good idea?
And what does it say?
The answer it provides is highly nuanced. It notes they can be a valuable aid to financial stability overall, and they keep the lending markets moving, but they are not right for everybody.
Because of that accelerated timeline. If you stumble, the system is designed to process your failure incredibly fast.
Exactly. The text explicitly states that trust deeds are best suited to people who have a regular, stable income and can commit to regular payments. You just do not have the luxury of time that a judicial foreclosure might afford you.
That makes sense.
The strictness and the speed of a non-judicial foreclosure mean that a temporary financial hardship, like a sudden medical bill or, a few months of unemployment, can result in the loss of your home much more rapidly than it would under a traditional mortgage.
It's a really sobering mechanism to understand.
Yeah.
And it brings us full circle on our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah, it really does.
We started by looking at a traditional two-party mortgage, borrower and lender, mortgager and mortgagee, a system where the borrower keeps the title, the lender holds a lien, and if the agreement falls apart, the lender has to battle it out in court, leaning heavily on the judicial safety net to ensure due process.
Then we explored the alternative, the three-party deed of trust, trustor, beneficiary, and the neutral trustee, a system that splits the title, giving the borrower the physical use of the home, while an automated escrow vault basically holds the legal paperwork.
A vault pre-programmed with a power of sale clause.
Precisely. A mechanism whose primary function in a default is to execute a swift, highly efficient, non-judicial foreclosure. It is a system engineered for speed, liquidity, and lender protection, bypassing the courts entirely.
The biggest takeaway here is that knowing your state's specific real estate laws isn't just, dry legal trivia. It is deeply personal.
Extremely personal.
Whether you live in a mortgage state or a deed of trust state dictates the literal timeline of your financial survival if hardship strikes. It is the invisible web beneath your roof, and it determines exactly how quickly and by what mechanism that roof can be taken away.
It highlights how critical it is to understand the mechanics of the documents you are signing. You aren't just agreeing to an interest rate or a monthly payment. You are agreeing to a specific procedural reality regarding your legal rights to your own home.
Which leaves us with a lingering question, something for you to really chew on after this deep dive is over.
Always love these.
We know that deeds of trust offer this significantly faster, cheaper, non-judicial foreclosure process. We know it greatly benefits lenders by reducing their risk, lowering their legal costs, and keeping capital liquid. So if it is so wildly efficient for the financial system, why aren't they mandated in all 50 states?
That's a fascinating question.
Right. What does that geographical split reveal about how different state governments view the very concept of homeownership? Every state has to make a choice. How do they balance a lender's demand for economic efficiency against a borrower's right to judicial protection?
It's delicate balance.
It seems that depending on where you cross a state line, the fundamental definition of fairness in the housing market changes completely. Keep that in mind the next time you look up at the roof over your head.